Welcome to Faith and Freedom, an audio feature produced by the Wagner Faith and Freedom Center located on the campus of Spring Arbor University. The Wagner Faith and Freedom Center serves as the nation's academic voice for faith, family, and freedom. And now here's your host for Faith and Freedom, Professor William Wagner.
Welcome to Faith and Freedom. On this program, we're going to begin with a simple but profound biblical truth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Scripture teaches us two foundational realities at once. First, God intentionally created humanity as male and as female. And second, every human being, without exception, bears the very image of God. Because of that, every person has inherent worth, has inherent dignity and value, and is worthy of being treated with respect and compassion. Standing for truth and standing for human dignity are not opposites. They belong together, and that is the posture we take today. No insults, no cruelty, no fear, just clarity, courage, and compassion. That biblical foundation matters when we turn to difficult cultural questions, including questions of fairness and safety in women's sports. Women's athletics exist for a reason. They exist because biological differences between men and women are real. They're enduring and they're consequential. That's especially so in strength-based sports. Ignoring these differences doesn't create inclusion, it creates injustice. And so I address this issue directly in an Amicus brief that we filed before the United States Supreme Court on behalf of President Brett Ellis here at Spring Arbor University, and drawing on President Ellis's service in the NAIA Council of Presidents. What we did was we looked at what they did, and that was a 2-year intensive study, and they reviewed transgender participation. And in that study, it was deliberate, it was evidence-based, it was free of stereotypes. And what happened? That study came out and had results, and that showed and it confirmed that what athletes already know. And that is, from their lived experience, they know that biological sex matters in sports. Strength, speed, and stamina create enduring competitive advantages for male athletes, and allowing males to compete in women's sports undermines fairness, compromises safety, and risks displacing women from podiums, from rosters, and even from scholarships. And so in response, the NAIA unanimously adapted a policy restoring separate male and female categories, protecting women's sports while preserving dignity of every athlete. Now, every place hasn't caught up with that fairness policy. And so I want to continue talking about this issue, and I want to welcome our guest. My guest today is Brenda Bowen. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Bowen. Brenda is a Christian woman, a competitive powerlifter, and someone who has paid a very personal price for raising issues of conscience, fairness, safety in women's sports. I'm going to tell you ahead of time, she didn't seek controversy. She sought integrity. And when she spoke honestly and respectfully, she faced a backlash that no one should have to endure alone. And so, Brenda, welcome to Faith and Freedom. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for being here.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Well, before we get into the controversy, tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, your faith, your family, and how you came to powerlifting, especially later in life.
Well, I live here in Spring Arbor. I moved here in 2022. I grew up in Liberty Township, Michigan, which is right down the road. I'm married, and I have a couple cats at home, and I got into competitive powerlifting. I was a competitive bodybuilder before going into powerlifting, and so I had a kind of a strange experience as I was prepping for my next bodybuilding show, and somebody said, you should try powerlifting, and then that person left, and then within a couple minutes someone says, you should try powerlifting. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I went into powerlifting, and shortly after that.
And man, just that moment when you know that God has created you in a way that, hey, this fits, this works, this is part of my DNA.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Well, why don't you take us to the meet where a biological male competed in the women's category and won the Best Lifter award. What did you see and what did you feel in that moment?
It was kind of disbelief. I kind of felt like I was in the twilight zone. It's like, is this really happening? And then after he received that award, I went up and said something to the state chairman. I was receiving a medal for master's lifter.
Yeah.
And so, and I just said to him, I didn't think that's right. And he immediately got upset with me.
Did you do that quietly and respectfully, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, what happened when you did that?
He, of course, he was mad. He got red in the face, and then he told me it was none of my business, and that that particular athlete. He said they felt like they had to give him something, and that particular athlete would not go to nationals or worlds.
Well, what did he do? What did the guy that was? Did he end up yelling at you or something too? Or?
Yeah, he did.
Publicly?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
We were at the podium, and
wow.
Yeah. So he was standing at the kind of the podium, and I was off to the side, and so he was.
Well, how do you process something like that? How do you process being publicly yelled at on the podium in front of a crowd?
Well, it's one
simply for voicing your conscience.
It's one of those situations that you're just kind of dumbfounded and shocked. So I just kind of stood there and took it, and then after a while he kind of calmed down a little bit, and then I got my medal. I went to where I was standing, and I got approached by the rightful winner of that Best Female Lifter Awards, her boyfriend. And he's like, what did he say? And I'm like, he told me it's none of my business. And he, shortly after that, if not right after that, went right up to the podium and to talk to him. And then when he did, some other...
so you had some people coming around supporting you then, because truth resonates, I guess.
Yes, it does. I had some other males in the audience get out of their seats and stand up too. And the sad thing about that, the individual that won the Best Women's Lifter Award, he wasn't seeking attention, and he really didn't want it, and he just wanted. He seemed kind of, I guess, embarrassed by it. He just wanted to be ignored, really. Yeah. And so it hurt the I think the gal who should have won was 24 years old. It kind of hurt her, and it kind of hurt him at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I don't know if they wanted a virtual signal or what their purpose was.
Well, it sounds like you handled it properly. I mean, the Bible talks about that we're supposed to be unafraid to stand for truth, but it also talks about that we're supposed to do it with compassion and respect. And it sounds like you did it in that way, even though there was a cost.
Yeah.
For you as well. You were talking about the cost to the woman who lost. The cost, there was a fairly big cost there for you. Let's talk about physical cost and perseverance maybe for a couple of minutes. Not long after, it's my understanding that you faced some major physical setbacks. You want to talk about that and walk us through that season in your life, and how is faith important?
Shortly, I went to World Cups, and before World Cup, I had a shoulder injury, so I kind of muscled my way through it and just kind of went anyways, and I ended up paying for it. I had to have shoulder surgery afterwards, and just when I was kind of healing up from that, I found out I had a congenital heart defect of atrial septum defect, and so I got
Is that ASD?
Yes, yep, ASD.
Yeah.
So I got that taken care of at U of M, and they're one of the few hospitals in the U.S. that I could get that done. So I was glad because it was local, and so after that, I asked my cardiologist, can I go back to powerlifting? And so he asked around to some other colleagues, and he came back and said, well, no one's ever done that before.
Wow.
And so he gave me the clearance at 5 pounds slowly, and so I spent the next 2.5 years building myself back up, really more for my shoulder injury than my heart. But
so you plan to come back
Yeah.
After the doctor, first of all, doctors say one thing, God can do anything. All things God is possible. We know that. But even though you're told that no precedence for a power lifter after this kind of, repair, you're planning a comeback and you do it for over 2 years. So, when I'm hearing things, when I see physical cost, okay, I get that. Now I'm understanding the perseverance part, because you don't just come right back, do you? This is something that you are building. And so what sustained you physically, emotionally, and spiritually during that time?
Just hope. And it's just like, and determination. And it just kind of felt like I needed to get back, and there was something I had to do.
Wow. Well, good for you. So now you come back and you return to competition, and now you're finding yourself, because you've been away for a while, so now the folks are younger, I'm sure, coming up, and then you also again encounter chemically transitioned athletes.
Yes. Yep.
And notwithstanding any outcomes, when you saw that, what's happening inside? How are you processing that internally? All of a sudden, you're seeing this.
It's like an automatic, like this isn't right.
Yeah.
And then I had to compete against an athlete, and I was just like, how am I going to do this? And they have all the advantages, and it's like, and from that point, it was my first meet back, and I fought so hard to get back and to have that happen.
Yeah. Well, and so here's the thing. That brief that I had mentioned in the introduction, that brief outlined what the NAIA did in its study. And the thing that came out of that study that was just so amazing to me is that every place that it mattered, there was a competitive disadvantage.
Yes, yep.
And every place that it mattered, there was a fairness
yes.
Disadvantage. And I know powerlifting is a little bit different than some of these other sports where there's a scholarship perhaps that gets taken away by somebody else, or there's a position that gets taken away on the team by somebody else. But there's a spiritual aspect to this, but there's something that is very consistent with it. That spiritual aspect is very much tied into, I think, sometimes that there's a fairness aspect and there's a safety aspect as well. And you've been very, very articulate at explaining that. And I think last time I saw you was in the gym.
Okay.
And I noticed that, on your coat you had a fairness in women's sports type button, and, exercising freedom of speech and the free exercise of conscience. And so in spite of these hard things that you've gone through, you seem to have the courage.
Yeah.
To continue. What's driving that courage to continue? You continue to do it with compassion. You continue to do it with respect, but you continue to be fiercely unafraid.
Well, I'm 53 years old, and I have the courage for all the women and girls that are coming up behind me. Basically, I was born in 1972, and that's the same year they had Title IX, and I've had that advantage all this whole time, and I want women and girls that are coming up behind me to have the same thing. And then when I did kind of speak out a little bit and got some backlash, I just felt like I don't want anyone to go through this, what I've went through, and so it's not that I dislike transgender athletes. I just really do it for the women and girls.
Right. And for the fairness.
Yes. Yep.
And in other sports, safety.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where you've got contact sports. So you were warned that there could be personal and professional consequences. You've decided to speak anyways. And you've made very clear that it's not about hate. It's about protecting women. It's about protecting the next generation coming behind you. How has your faith shaped the way that you've responded to criticism and personal attacks?
It's it's shaped me in a way that I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And it's not that I feel I'm doing the right thing. I know I'm doing the right thing. And, I think you quoted in the beginning of the show, you quote basically Genesis, 1:27. He created a man and female. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, what would you say to female athletes who feel pressured to stay silent? Because we hear from them from time to time.
Yeah. I would say speak up. It's a little bit hard at first, and it's a little bit scary, and it's a little bit intimidating. Sometimes you get ignored, but keep on talking. And sometimes people get mad, but just keep on speaking. And because we all have to, not only female athletes, all of us need to speak up and take a stand for
fiercely standing for truth and doing it with respect and compassion. And looking back now, would you do it again?
Yes, I would.
That's so good. And let me finish up. What gives you hope for the future, if anything? Because obviously you have hope or you wouldn't be doing this.
Well, we always win in the end.
We win in the end.
Yeah.
And that, we know the end of the story, don't we? Well, Brenda, thank you, not just for your strength, but for your integrity. And thank you for coming on Faith and Freedom to tell your story.
Glad to be here.
And when we come back, the final wrap.
Growing deep roots means anchoring yourself to Jesus Christ, the source of all life and learning. Here at Spring Arbor University, faith and academics work hand in hand, grounding you in truth and wisdom. With a close-knit Christian community by your side, you'll grow strong, ready to face life's challenges. At SAU, you won't just learn, you'll thrive. Grow deep roots at Spring Arbor University. Visit arbor.edu today.
As we close, I want to return to where we began with the words in Scripture, male and female, He created them. That declaration is not a weapon. It's reality. It's a gift. It tells us that God's design is intentional, meaningful, and good. Difference is not injustice, and erasing difference is not compassion. When we deny the reality of male and female, we don't elevate human dignity, we undermine it. And when we ignore those differences in women's sports, we don't create fairness. We take it away from the very women whose spaces they were created to protect. And so at the same time, because every human being bears the image of God, we reject cruelty, mockery, and dehumanization in all forms. Truth and love are not rivals. They stand together. They stand together. And Brenda's story is not about fear or exclusion. It's about faithfulness to truth, to conscience, and to the women and girls who will compete long after our voices are gone. So Brenda's story reminds us that courage often looks quiet at first, but echoes for generations. Until next time, this is Will Wagner for Faith, for Freedom, and for such a time as this.